Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Joseph Habdang from Orgnet coming back with yet another tutorial explaining you how to make well-designed application, what is the professional approach to software development and consultancy, and that will be using JQuery, ASP.NET, JSON, Ajax and MsSql. I didn't have a place to put here an MsSql logo. Anyway, so in this particular tutorial we'll continue with databases. This is one of the series about databases, and I'll be talking about how to create a system logger, a powerful idea in programming. So let me just remove this stuff because it's not necessary right now. So let's clear this, sorry. Now, so in the last tutorial we have ended up with this database, which is basically very primitive database having an article and user and global inheritance object, global inheritance of DB object. Now, as I mentioned before, you could start adding here fields like creation date time or timestamps or whatever else you wanted to do in order to have these tables to inherit from that. However, this is not the smartest way to do it. You don't want to have done it that way. You want to have a nice and powerful database-wide logger which will log all your activities, and then based on that you can get all the data from logger, because when user is created you just you log it in the logger. Whenever user is edited, you log it in the logger. Whenever user logs in, you log it in logger. So every single action will be logged in a logger, and therefore you don't need any of these creation of date times or last edited or total logged in count or total logged out count or total login failure count, all these sorts of nonsense fields that people add in databases, which when I see them I just get a headache immediately. I'm sorry, when I have to work with a project which has these fields I get headache. Anyway, so what we're talking right now about, we're talking about logger. So let's just add, I have of course prepared it because I'm not gonna create this table in front of you. It's gonna be, it's silly if I did. There you go, this is the logger, and notice what happens. First thing, let me just change the view, sorry. Notice what happens. The logger is attached not to the user or not to the article, or God forbid, there is not a mapper table between each and every one of the articles. I've seen a logger done ones like this, when there was, for example, a log and there was a mapper table between log and article, and another mapper table between log and user, another mapper table between log and something else, and you had 15 tables which were logging, which were for logger mappers, and there was a horrible design. There was a spamming database with tables which are totally unnecessary. Notice what I do. Because I have global inheritance of all the data carriers, which I call it, which is the user, article, YouTube video, file, whatever else, because all these tables have global inheritance. Now, what I do? Smart! I attach the logger to the DB object, and therefore through this I can actually log any action from user, any action on an article, any action on file, you know, patient, doctor, whatever table you have, person, car, part, flight, tour, hotel, whatever you have tables there. Suddenly you have, ladies and gentlemen, you can log everything. This is beautiful database structure, guys. Look at this and awe, and you know, at this majestic, beautiful view of this the awesomeness of this awesome database. Okay, jokes on the side. What fields do I have in my logger? Because this is important. Well, obviously I have ID. It's gonna be big in, because again you're gonna have hundreds and thousands of these logs, and there will be the log table will be like 500 megabytes very soon, so don't worry, but that's okay, that's how it should be. Then you have a date, which is date time. It could be a small date time to save up some memory, which would be actually significant in this case, but I still make it not small but just regular date time for the sake of it. It doesn't really matter, because your ID will actually make you will be able to know the sequence of the logs because of the ID. You don't have to have a precise date time, but I still have it. Then obviously relation to the DB object, which is here, beautiful database, which is, wow, notice, nullable. Nullable because Sometimes you want to have actually logs which aren't unrelated to any part of database. So you don't want to limit yourself. Then user ID. Well, this is just to know if there was some user logged in when you were doing that. And I actually forgot to add a relation there. There should be, of course, a relation. I apologize for that. I had argument once with another architect, and he said that, well, since user is a DB object, then this should be as well like a DB object relation, you know, DB, and then to user, and then there should be a double relation to this. And yes, it can. It actually doesn't matter, pretty much. It makes SQL a little bit harder. In principle, it could give you more flexibility, but I never cared about that. This particular small thing, it's tiny details, so you shouldn't worry about it too much. Now, manual text. It's just some text you type in by hand. It's of course only seen by programmers. It's not for the to be shown on the website. So it's like just some random text. So in this next action, I will delete this and do this, and then, you know, send a rocket to the moon. So this is the sort of thing you would put there, if you work for NASA, of course. Then data. Now, if there is any problem, this field is for debugging. If you have any error, for example, some exception thrown in your code, you want to be able to save the local data. The crucially important part, of course, for each of the actions, you know that there is 1, 2, 3 fields or one object that is necessary to be saved, and then basically that's what you save there. Now notice this is nvarchar. This is very important. Some people argue that this should be binary, because then you would actually save up on space quite significantly, sorry. And yes, indeed you would. This is true. However, there's a problem. When I browse through logs, there's millions of them, and when there's some error, I want to be able to see immediately, just in the table viewer, what kind of data was there, just to get a feeling of what is going on. And if it's binary, you can't do it, obviously, because you get just a series of bits. So what I usually do, I save data into objects serialized to string. So that when I browse through the file, scrolling down through the log table, I can immediately see what sort of data was there. It makes your life so much easier. And you remember, programming is about making your life easy. So you don't want to make this suddenly binary. Yes, you would save up space, but frankly, who cares? Your hard drive, perhaps on your server, is 100 gigabytes. Before the database becomes that big, you know, oh my god, you're gonna have hundreds of other problems on the way. So I either save up it's serialized to XML or actually JSON. I personally prefer JSON serialization, because it's just so much easier to see the data, you know. I mean, if you have the XML, you just, the data is actually buried under the XML. And if you have nice JSON objects, you know, 3-4 fields, you immediately see what is going on there. Stack trace, well, this is obviously for when there's an error, you want to save stack trace. Of course, you catch the exception, but you still save the stack trace to see what was going on. But this is not enough, because if you wanted to actually save all that information that is important in this table without these two last fields, you would basically kill the database. You want to avoid using these 3 fields as much as possible. I mean, for primitive things, you want to actually have this null, so the table is actually small. So I add always 2 things, 2 extra tables: log type ID and log priority type. I mean, log type and log priority type. And these are 2 tables which basically define what sort of log it is in order to have ID, in order to have basically references. Because if you had a string field, obviously in here, which would say what kind of type it is, which is, for example, insert, edit, delete, login, logout, whatever, then you would spam the database with text, which is not necessary. So what I do, I add a log type table, which basically says specifically what sort of log it will be. And as I said before, there will be, let's say, inserted, update, edited, deleted, sorry, nah, I can't pronounce this word. Logged in, if it's user, logged out, failed login, created account activated, account deactivated, account whatever else, article published, whatever you want. There will be hundreds of rows of these log types. And I'll of course later teach you how to structure them properly. But this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna have this log types here, and in this way you can have these three fields null for majority of the times, and actually have that keeping database small. Now, there is actually another thing. There are some things you wanna basically spam log. When I say spam log, there are certain actions that are happening that are so crucial. You wanna basically log every single line of the code that is happening there. For example, when you're doing payment module or something like that, you wanna spam log the database. So then you will have a lot of these rows which are basically gonna spam the database, right? Crazy. So then you have to have a robust and significant and very good way to clear up the log once in a while from the data that is not necessary there anymore, not essential for the operation of the system, and yet important, you know, for a month or something like that to keep it there. So what I do, I actually have a log priority type when I just have four rows, essential, high, medium, and low, which basically says what kind of priority this information is. If it is a crucial information for the system functionality, for example, user creation date time, well, you have to keep it. This is essential because you want to show this user creation date time. You can't delete it. If you delete it, well, suddenly, bam, your system stops working because you need this to be shown. For example, it's essential information. This logs that have, for example, the creation date time of user. This is essential information for the system functionality. So thus, log priority type will be essential. But if you spam log stuff, you know, as I said, you just write logs for every single line of code, which you'd be surprised it is actually quite important to sometimes do, especially as I said with payment modules when you handle credit card payments. You want to keep the priority low because, well, I mean, when the payment went through, well, all this, every single line logs that you have with data and stack trace backed up and everything, this is not necessary. You can delete it afterwards. The only thing that will be there, for example, is the final payment log, and that will be essential, so you have the date saved, for example, but all the logs in between are not necessary, so you put them low. And once in a while, when your log table becomes 500 megabytes, you just go there and delete all the low priority logs. And boom, it's back to 10 megabytes and you're happy, and everybody's happy again. So now notice what happens. I can't transition from the maybe silly, and somebody would say in unnecessary, having global inheritance object for a user and article structure to immediately show you why this stuff is important, why actually it supports and make your database more powerful, more flexible, more maintainable, and you want to keep it that way. Notice how nicely it fits and how logical it seems when you just look at it. Ah, log, okay, yeah, it is attached to this because of course there is logs for each of the data carrying objects, and yeah, it makes sense. Perfect, nice database, pleasure to work with it, and you just stay in awe, happy and awesome, and just, you know, just thinking how awesome you are and how great your code is. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed it, guys. I think this is really important that you learn these tricks that I'm just telling you right now. In next tutorial, I'll be talking about the naming conventions that are so important you can't even imagine. And I hope you enjoyed it. And because you're so much smarter right now than before, you know how to make professional logger, how to structure your logger in your database in a professional cutting edge level. You can go and ask your boss for a raise because you're so much smarter and you're an awesome programmer. Take care and see you guys next time on next tutorial. Have a good, awesome day. Bye bye.